Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Roni Abovitz and Ted Shilowitz. It's This Week in XR. It's March 31st, 2023. What the hell? Where does the time go?
Yeah, it's almost NAB, almost the time for the big National Association of Broadcasters conference, which is 100 years old this year, which is shocking because I think I've been going to it for probably 20
Since the radio guys.
Used to be the radio guys. Now it's the TV and movie guys. Yeah. Yeah.
And you said when we were in the green room that you were going to be doing a keynote.
I am doing a keynote, and I think I can just make this the scoop, even though it's
let's do it
so far. So you both know, and this is because of Roni, I've become close friends with David Copperfield, the very famous world-renowned magician that has his residency in Vegas at the MGM. He and I are buddies, and because of an impromptu thing last year, so there's a bit of a story to this. Last year at NAB, when we were kind of emerging out of the COVID cocoon and people were still nervous and stuff, it was the first kind of like Southwest, right? South by Southwest is like things are starting to get back. Some people are going in person that really needed to be there, so that was last year's NAB. I had a talk with Google, and one of the guys that was doing the talk got sick, got COVID, so he couldn't do it. And David and I were just hanging out because that's what we do when we're in Vegas together. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and I'm like, there's an empty chair. And he went, okay, I'll do it. So he came up and impromptu, he sat in on this session, which was kind of like in the back of the hall, was a minor, tech thing. And before you knew it, all these people were like, I think Ted is talking to like David Copperfield. And a lot of people came and it was fun. So this year, because it was so much fun, he's like, yeah, I'll do it again with you if you want. So we've upped the ante with this group called Mesa, which is part of the NAB collective. Guy Finley runs it. And David and I are going to do a talk together at the Sahara at 1:00 on Monday. So we're going to do a bit of a high wire act, which Charlie, this story with me is it could be great or it could be a train wreck because I'm testing all kinds of new technology.
But you're a master at vamping if it is.
Right.
It'll be good.
I can just kick it around. And even if it doesn't work, people tend to enjoy it because you're taking a risk and you're not playing it safe. So if you're interested in seeing us, this is the first time there's a link that explains that I'm doing something around like the magic of television, but it doesn't actually mention David. Probably this week we'll mention that he's going to be my partner in crime. So it'll be a lot of fun. So I hope everybody comes Monday at 1:00, the April 17th.
So our guest today was supposed to be Sebastian Bourget, who is the founder and CEO of Sandbox, not to be confused with the Sandbox location-based VR centers that we were discussing last week, but this is Sandbox Online, and they are decidedly not VR, although they have a kind of metaverse connected, 3D virtual worlds. So they certainly have a lot to do with this podcast and perhaps the future of the internet. So we can't get Sebastian. He's in Hong Kong. We're going to have Mathieu Nouzareth. Sorry, Mathieu, for massacring your name, but we're going to get him later. I think I'm going to have to do a solo interview after we scatter from this morning's news. So that's the plan there. So the three of us will just do the news this morning. A lot to talk about this week.
Yeah, Sandbox is one of the folks doing virtual land and earn to play gaming. So that's their sort of
sector. They have their own cryptocurrency called Sand, and they sell virtual land or rent it or whatever. And I guess we'll hear more about that later. But it's an interesting business plan. So assuming they can get the people in there, it could be a thing. But they're so small compared to Fortnite. And that, of course, was one of the lead stories this week, because following what Roni and I were talking about at the top of last week's show. I mean, as you unpack what Epic is doing here, they are building a creator economy. They're building a metaverse. There are multiple ways that participants can get paid. They're going to have obviously some kind of a banking system, which will generate revenue for them. There's been some speculation that the revenue that they were making on skins is not what it was. So they need new revenue streams. It just seems like really well-timed, really big announcement. This idea you could use Unreal Engine to build places with the assets you buy from their asset store. It's just, they're building the oasis, headset not required. And I just think this is a really big thing. I'm not sure people outside games and outside, XR really understand the scope of what's going on here. They've got, almost 100 million monthly uniques, and I think 350 million accounts. So this is, it's going to be hard, I think, for smaller metaverses like Sandbox to attract, the scale of, you cannot imitate the scale of Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean, this is I think something that came out of GDC, right? The Game Developers Conference, where they announced the Epic guys do a big keynote. And look, the thing about Tim Sweeney is he is not afraid. I have never seen Tim Sweeney back off from anything that he believes in as the future trajectory of where things are going. And whether he'll admit it or not, clearly he has learned from the overwhelming success of Roblox. So the way I sort of look at this is UGC is the next sort of landscape of monetization, right? Has been proven well by Roblox, but Roblox tends to live in a demographic that is fairly young, right? And Fortnite ages up from there. So we know that Roblox is experimenting and dancing around how do they keep their people on their platform as they get older. Fortnite is saying, how do they migrate those people from Roblox into Fortnite? And there's some crazy statistic about how many worlds, UGC worlds in Fortnite with this Fortnite engine that they're now released are being built. It's like in the millions already, and it's just mind-boggling.
They said half the time on the platform is spent in those worlds on Fortnite creation.
Other people's worlds, right, right.
Well, look, guys, one of the really amazing things about Tim, I've known him for many years, is that he is an amazing game designer, game theorist, right? So he not only knows how to design games in Fortnite, he knows the game he's playing against companies like Apple and others. So there's a bigger game and he's applying game theory there. He is not driven only by financial motivation, whereas the people he's competing against are driven largely by that, but he could bring this like founder imperative. And if you really know Tim, he comes from this ethic of like what computing and gaming is supposed to be. There was like, if you look back at like gaming in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, like what was more open, there's certain like hacker ethics about like shareability and bringing in community that are really these interesting philosophical ideas he's bringing into this company at now a real scale, right? He was always thinking about that, always doing it, but no one was listening to him.
Yeah.
Now he's at a scale where he gets to try it out a real global economic change. It's kind of amazing.
So
and I think he's one of the leading hopes for, by the way, I'll just say this here. What Tim is building is not the metaverse. He's building his portion of the metaverse, which might inspire others to realize like, this is a good example of the way forward. The metaverse will be really big, lots of pockets. This is Tim's corner of the metaverse. He's doing a really good job at it.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big corner. It's not a small corner.
It's a galaxy, but it's not
a galaxy.
It's a galaxy.
So the other thing in the news today, which we talk about every week because it won't go away, is of course WWDC, the Apple Developer Conference, will finally feature the whatever Reality One, iOS, Reality iOS will be the star of the show.
Nice, Ronnie.
Yeah. Exclusive only for those that are listening. We're seeing it right now. That's it.
I mean, that's actually the Roni, for those of you listening at home, has just put on some AR ski goggles and they're floating in front of his face as if they were the Apple XR glasses, which are still, by the way, no picture of them has emerged.
Except for now, this is
now
the
there it is.
global exclusive, right?
I don't know how this giant company keeps its secrets. It is amazing. I hope
Well,
they
didn't
don't.
get it, but this is the scoop. We beat the information. We beat everybody.
I hope that they will go out of their way to frame this $3,000 headset as mostly a developer unit and a prosumer unit, and actually kind of discourage people from buying it. I think, over promising is a mistake that a lot of people have made. They need to justify that price. That's not a normal price. And it's going to make a lot of people kind of dismissive, as many already are. So I just think it would be wise for them to minimize their promises and try and explain the exorbitant price.
Can I challenge that for a second? Like, if you walk into an Apple store, there are $5,000 monitors they sell, $6,000 monitors. You want to get the Apple Pro workstation, or if you want to get a fully loaded iMac Pro, you can end up spending $8,000. So Apple plays in price points at the MacBook Pro laptop and above.
That's a good point.
Max up for, I say $3,000 to over $10,000. Now it's pretty exotic. Okay. But they have these like pro folks, probably Ted is one of them.
No, it's true. You walk in there and they've got, the jewel encrusted Cartier iWatch. So, I mean, people are buying those. And so if they only want to sell a couple of 100,000.
Well, look, even today, outside of like amortizing the price through your monthly deal with your carrier, your iPhone Pro is like $1,300, right? And it's been around for 20 years now, right? So, it's not $300 to buy an iPhone, right? And that's a very mature product category. People just don't realize it because it just gets built into their plan. But if you went and just bought one unlocked retail, like you said, oh, I want to go buy an iPhone today, it's not going to cost you $299. It's going to cost you like, between the price and plus tax, it's going to be $1,500. So
by the way, here's the other piece. They're setting a price point and people think, well, at real scale, they're going to drop it down. No, your MacBook Pro still cost $2,800 for the last decade. That's right. It's probably going to go up. And eventually there's going to be like, like maybe when they're at Gen 5, you'll get like the Gen 1 tech at like $1,000.
Right.
But they're not going for like the $300 Facebook thing, because
they're not.
I think the reality is you cannot build great tech at the Apple quality level, or I would say at the Magic Leap 2 quality level. I think that's the other ethic at that low price point. It's just, you're just going to use garbage components. And that's what you see at the few $100s, but at the few $1,000s, you're building amazing tech. And that's probably going to separate the market for a while.
But you guys know what I know. Apple is literally the most profitable company on planet Earth, right? They are the pinnacle of profitability as a company. They have figured out how to make something aspirational and keep it aspirational and not really have to lower the price point of their entire sort of lineup.
And by the way, guys, why are we thinking $3,000 is a lot of money? I'm just going to put that out. Or a population will spend $80,000 to $150,000 on a Tesla.
Right.
Yeah.
Apple's probably thinking,
all right,
everyone
I stand corrected.
We've beaten it down.
I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
You can be totally wrong.
All right, so moving on to an interesting tidbit that everybody was talking about because it's so juicy. Disney axes the Metaverse group. That should be, again, a surprise to absolutely no one. They've already got a bunch of metaverses. Linking them all together would have been a political feat akin to getting Mike White elected president of the United States. So sorry for all the people who lost their jobs. It was a dumb idea. If anybody could do it, Mike White probably could, but that was a mission that never could be accomplished. So they got started. I think Iger came in and said, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're on the right topic. They already have a group that builds things that, outside of the nomenclature, that of course is a big frustration for me. It's called Imagineering, and Imagineering understands how to do these things. They already have an employee base, and they didn't really need to have another employee base on top of that employee base. So at the end of the day, it makes sense. And, I think a lot of
that's really important, because the news is wrongly reporting that Disney's like out of the metaverse business, but Imagineering, X Labs at Lucasfilm, Disney Research, they're completely into this.
Exactly. There's just no need for an Uber metaverse. And I don't think those fiefdoms in particular were gonna play nice. I just don't. I think the Star Wars universe is hermetically sealed, and they don't want to be connected to the Marvel metaverse or the Disney metaverse. They're a metaverse unto themselves.
I mean, Disney is the original metaverse.
Yes, right.
They have built
Adventureland. All the other different lands that you could go to, Fantasyland and so forth. Pico.
Yeah,
In
that's
the
kind
news
of
this week, it
interesting,
came out. They brought in the CEO of ByteDance to testify in front of Congress, Shuzi Chu, and he absolutely fumbled the ball. And the grilling was a made-for-TV, shark frenzy. So I don't know. Do you guys think really TikTok could be banned? And what would happen to Pico then?
I mean, I'm of two minds on this. I listen to the political dynamics of it with some chagrin, and I kind of like. I think at the end of the day, as much as maybe there is something there, like it's a bit of a nuanced argument. There is definitely an awareness and a concern of very smart people that tech platforms, regardless of where they come from, regardless of where their origin story is, tend to have nefarious goals, right? And tend to be these for-profit monsters, profit first, that use algorithms in very scary ways. This is what we've seen with social media across the board, right? But who knows if I just say this kind of stuff, but I personally don't think TikTok is going out of their way to do this. I think they've got better things to do. They're busy making boatloads of cash on kids goofing around on this platform. And I guess it's always important to be concerned and aware of these things. And maybe I'll correct myself someday when I go, oh, wow, boy, I didn't realize they were really doing that. I just don't think they're really doing that. That's my opinion. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
Can I throw a counter, Ted?
Yeah.
I think there's two things happening simultaneously. One is there's no one should have a doubt that China is emerging and has emerged as the only real superpower to challenge the United States.
Sure. And
what's happening is, what is that new equilibrium? There's some great books on it. We won't go into that today, but I actually experienced some of this at Magically, that US-China tension. And the reality is the world, for the sake of peace, needs these two superpowers to get to an equilibrium. TikTok is two things. It's an amazingly cool business that a lot of American kids and adults like. It is also, though, it is impossible to not realize this, it is also a way for China to probe the United States. It is a massive information gathering system. And unlike what the US does, where we believe private companies, even though they're not perfect on data, they're not like government control arms. There's zero probability that any major company in China exists outside the control of the government. When President Xi took office, he just ended that.
Right.
Like, the Chinese government has control over all of its major companies. That's just the way the country runs. It's a centrally controlled economy with the appearance of capitalism, right? So they're basically showing you could be successful in this new model. You can build amazing big capitalistic companies with central authority control. That's the model that's opposing American democracy and free market. And TikTok is like probing us in that interesting way, while it's also entertaining us. So we're in this weird indeterminate state where what's our equilibrium and what do we do about companies like that? And I think we have to find a way to make peace with them. Like, China's not going away. This is probably way out of scope of the podcast, but TikTok is a tiny signal of a much bigger issue of the US and China trying to find global equilibrium, who does what. And as a superpower, we are going to have to make room for another one, hopefully without going into a giant war. And there's a great book, Graham Allison, about this equilibrium state. And 20 or 30% of the time in the last thousands of years, superpowers reach an equilibrium without a war. 70% plus, I got to check the data again, but it was that kind of majority. They had to have a war to determine that equilibrium. We want to avoid that. And I think TikTok is at the tip of the spear of that issue. That's the scary part.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I guess the thing that just in the back of my head, and maybe it's just a naivete, and maybe because they're, what do they say is that phrase about the devil that the devil's best trick is making you believe he isn't real. That phrase, I'm butchering that, but so maybe that's there. But I just feel like China's just got better things to do than monkey around with TikTok. I totally get that there's the government vein that keeps an eye on it, but I've been to China so many times and have seen just the insanity of what China is. There's something in the back of my head that says it's much ado about nothing.
The only thing that there are two things I think that we have to be cognizant of is that social media news feeds can influence us in ways of which we are not aware. Right. And that is not hard to do. And that's not a China thing. That's right. That's not just a China thing. But that's my point. To think a Chinese company is doing that also is concerning. And here's the thing, okay? So they know that, big deal, right? They can do that, big deal. It's all about selling nicer underwear. But during a presidential election where it's close and you have a preference, you can manipulate that system to sell something other than underwear.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's really where I think my personal concern lies. They just have to put their thumb on the scale for a few weeks. It's almost impossible to detect. They can find the right people, they can influence them in scientific ways. And, that's a little terrifying. It's terrifying that Facebook and Twitter can do it. And it's terrifying that TikTok could do it. And the fact that, I have a concern about Elon Musk doing it, and I have a concern about the Chinese government doing it, because neither of them are elected. There is no way to check their activities. We're talking about an activity which is not necessarily criminal, right? It's not criminal to influence people unless you're a foreign government.
Let's loop this back to XR and the metaverse for a second. One of the things I learned that requires a lot of caution and guardrails is that these systems, the early systems like social media at scale, and then deeper, rich metaverse systems when they go to scale, highly influence and shape your brain, which means a small amount of people can effectively shape the behavior somewhat subconsciously, somewhat without them even realizing, little micro influence by micro influence to do things that they may not want to do, to buy things they may not want to vote for people. That's not democracy. That's people hacking our democracy. So there's a bigger question. How do you make our democracy safe computationally? Not this podcast, but you've raised the question with TikTok, so we went there.
No, that's a great point. One last thing before we go, and then I'll interview our guest from Sandbox, Mathieu. I saw on Tuesday night one of the 10 best things I've ever experienced in VR.
Yeah, you had high marks for this, Charlie.
Oh my God. And I have to tell you, it was completely unexpected. Wow. Because here's this kind of stodgy, I'm sorry, David Whalen, stodgy social platform for education. I use it for some of my classes. In fact, you're with us on Monday, you may have to meet us in Engage.
Yeah, that's fine.
And they're trying to build a business metaverse. So, this is not a website or a VR destination that one identifies with entertainment. They have metaversities, they don't have the entertainment, yet they put together this event, which they started planning back during COVID, which is a VR concert starring Fatboy Slim. So I thought, oh, well, that's like typical of Engage. Fatboy Slim, a guy who hasn't been relevant in 30 years. Right? So, okay. So I had pretty low expectations. I wasn't even sure why they were doing it, but I like those guys. And, Chris Madsen, who's their US community guy, got on everybody, and he pulled every personal favor he could to fill up this room with press and influencers and, all sorts of people that we know and people who have been on this show were there. And so I would say, if you can amaze the technorati, every time there was a scene change, everybody gasped. I mean, I have never had an experience like that in VR. It's funny because
what headset were you wearing? What was
I was just wearing my Quest Pro. It wasn't nothing special. I saw some people were in there with PCs. It's obviously going to be a markedly better experience with better graphics. And if I thought it was a big deal, you know what, I would have linked it up so I could get the better graphics. But it was amazing. And it really was things that could only be done in VR. They played with scale. There were crazy interactive things. You could ride piggyback on a gorilla, you know, or get beamed up into a spaceship. It was unbelievable. And the whole
Charlie,
time
was
you're
it people
dancing.
did they finally solve working in the medium instead of trying to copy paste from other?
Yes, that's my point. It was native to the medium. So it's funny. So David Whalen has caught lightning in a bottle. And, you know, here's the story. What the hell is this guy going to do now that he's kind of hacked the code for music in the metaverse?
Well, there'll probably be other musical artists that'll be like, that's the one they don't want to go to Horizons. They want to go to Engage. You know, that's the plan.
I mean, I'm still walking around saying, what just happened? What is going to happen with this? So
for someone that works the entertainment business and understands what a hit means, they got themselves a hit. Good on them. And now, you know, they'll see if they can capitalize.
But this is how it happens, right?
Yeah.
This is how it happens. They could end up being, you know, the metaverse site, and starting out as something completely different, just like pivoting to what people really want, what can scale. This is a concert that can scale. They could, you know, there's nothing about it is live, you know, except for the people participating.
Yeah.
So it was like Travis Scott in Fortnite. But it was in VR, which is so much more powerful than a 2D screen. And I loved that Travis Scott thing. I thought it was amazing. But this was like pretty amazing too. So hopefully people will have a chance to do it soon. You know, it's obviously computationally expensive for them, so they have to figure out the economics around it. But I'm telling you, artistically, the studio guys at Engage really got to get off. And they worked, apparently Norman, whatever his name is, who is Fatboy Slim, really got into it and was brainstorming with them. They were taking a lot of the iconography out of his famous music videos, which, you know, I've never seen. Of course, everybody knows, you know, Funk Soul Brother and all the other hits that he did, which are still fun as hell. And they were also sort of rave mix versions of them. So, you know, there was a little freshness to it there, I thought. And so good on Fatboy Slim. Again, expectations were low. That partly may be why I was so amazed. But the other thing that I picked up on while it was going on is, oh my God, all these other people are also amazed.
So Roni, do you think Tim Sweeney is proud of what he's started and that others are evolving and maybe one-upping him? Or do you think you know him pretty well? Is he going back to the well? Is he with all his developers this morning going, this little thing made more news than us this week? What the hell is going on? How, you know, like, what's your take on how he's reacting and how his team is reacting to something like this? Which is, you know, a small number of people obviously saw it compared to what Travis
probably less than 500 people saw it.
Right.
Look, I don't think someone like Tim is threatened by this. I think what they're going to do is, like, they do have a big music initiative. Someone from Epic is going to study this and go, all right, how do we incorporate that now into, like, you know, UE Fortnite?
Right.
That's what they're thinking. Like, they're gonna be like, oh great, someone is like going native and understanding how to do things even more than we did with Travis Scott. Like, we want to bring that into our world. I think that's, they're not gonna be threatened. They're gonna be like, let's rapidly adopt.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, exactly. So it does show the potential of music and the power of music to create experiences in the metaverse, and and the power of music to bring people together. So
music guys, I know that. Yeah.
By the way, Charlie, I love this because I am working with one of the big music labels on a music XR thing, which I can't talk about. So this was not.
You guys do all the fun stuff.
You
guys can't ever talk about the fun stuff you're doing.
Rody doesn't even. Rody just.
I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, all this secrecy kind of hurts my feelings, I have to say. You know, you guys get to be the cool kids, and I'm the guy sitting in front of my computer actually working. How did that work out?
Yeah, well.
All right, gentlemen. It is fun every Friday to chat with you. Have a great weekend, and let me get on to this interview. Those of you, stick with us for the discussion about the Sandbox.
See you.
Mathieu Nouzareth Did I get that right? Mathieu
Yeah,
Nouzareth,
almost. Close it. Exactly. That's close
the
enough.
CEO of
Hi.
Sandbox US. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here today.
I'm surprised our paths have not crossed sooner. You're so accomplished in so many aspects of new technology. It's almost hard to know where to start. So let's start with the Sandbox and kind of work backwards from there. Tell us a little bit more about what the Sandbox is. We had the guy from Sandbox VR, the VR simulation centers called Sandbox that are popping up in malls around the US and overseas. And I know that's created some confusion, but I would say the Sandbox that you represent is actually much better known. It's a virtual world, if I'm describing it correctly, that's been around for 2 years now. Right, you have your own virtual economy and cryptocurrency, and a lot of celebrities backing it and other high-profile investors.
Exactly. So the Sandbox is probably the largest Web3 metaverse, and everyone knows, what a metaverse is. It's like this virtual space where you have an avatar of yourself, and you can wander around the metaverse, and you can play games, you can meet with friends, you can have social experiences, listen to music, attending concerts, and the likes. And it's Web3 because, yes, we have our own economy. We have our own token. And it's pretty important for us because we feel that if as people spend more and more time online and as our digital life is becoming more and more important, we want creators and users to really own what they're doing or what they're buying, and we're doing this through our cryptocurrency, the Sand token.
So people keep your token in their MetaMask wallet, and it entitles them to certain privileges inside of Sandbox?
So the Sand token is really mostly a utility token for creators on the one hand to sell their creation. So you can be, creating an item, you can be creating an avatar, you can be creating a full-fledged experience, and you sell this to consumers and to users, and you sell this.
Is there an asset store? Is there an asset?
Yeah, there is there is an asset store. Exactly, you do this to an asset store. So you list those items to the asset store, and then users come and choose, and you list the price and describe what they do, what they look like, and consumers and gamers can come and buy those. And for users, for players, the Sand token is the way you actually buy item in the game, or you buy skins or avatars or items in the game. It's pretty simple.
And of course, Sand, this currency can be exchanged for fiat currency at any time on the exchange. Yes.
And we don't do that ourselves. We rely on third-party exchangers. But yes, you can exchange the Sand for other cryptocurrencies, or you can sell it for fiat, which is like US dollars or euros or British pound, whatever.
Right. So one thing that these new metaverses like Sandbox are up against is established players like Fortnite, and Epic made all those announcements. So you're fighting against enormous scale. So what is the strategy for a small, or a new, I should say, company like Sandbox to really achieve that scale so you can compete against those giant companies?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to say those companies, we great respect for those big companies for what are essentially Web2 metaverse, right? The metaverse is not new, and you had Web1 maybe with Second Life a long time ago, and then you have Fortnite and Roblox and others building amazing businesses, great product that I really greatly admire. On our side, we are coming from a different angle. And the big difference is really the Web3 element inside the Sandbox. And as I was saying, the big difference is that it's the digital ownership. Right now, in a Web2 metaverse, the creators, when they create something, of course, they can sell it to consumers, but they don't really own it, and the consumers don't really own it. Everything belongs to the Web2 platform at the end of the day.
Sure.
And the Web2 platform can really change, their terms of condition, or they can decide to, move some of your content and so on. So that's one fundamental difference. And the other big advantage of relying on Web3 as opposed to a Web2 engine is that the Web3 ecosystem is really, it's more interoperable with other metaverse. Right now, if you work or if you create content in Fortnite, it's very much siloed into Fortnite, and it's not easy to export your content to other metaverse or to import content into those metaverse. And Web3 is much more open. Web3 is much more interoperable. And the reason is because Web3 is not a zero-sum game. We all gain in the Web3 space by working together, including competitors sometimes, because the pie is growing. And as opposed to Web2, where Web2 is still a zero-sum game. I mean, I come from Web2. I was doing mobile gaming before, and yeah, when the pie doesn't grow anymore, you're just trying to.
Well, we should get into your background, because you've done so many things in the past 20 years. Or actually the past 30 years, right? I mean, you've been doing this since
almost, yeah, since 1995. Yeah, I created 5 companies over the past 30 years and sold 3 and 2 went public, and mostly in gaming and cryptocurrency. So that's why, I've been a board member for the Sandbox for quite some time, and I was super happy to join, full-time early last year.
And what does it mean to go from being a board member to being full-time? They made up this title of CEO of US to differentiate your work from Sebastian's. So
yes,
can you tell us a little bit about how the structure works for Sandbox?
Yeah, I mean, the US is our biggest market by far. This is where we have the most users and the most revenues. It's not the only one, obviously, but and we're to really focus a lot on this, and hence me, coming in and build US operations almost from scratch.
How big are you now?
So the Sandbox is a few hundred people throughout the world. We have offices in the US. The headquarters in the US is Los Angeles, but also we have Buenos Aires and Uruguay, Paris, London, Hamburg, Seoul, Tokyo, Hong Kong. I mean, we are literally not everywhere, but we are in a lot of places. And I think
are those where you have remote workers, or you actually have office space?
No, we have office space, and then we have remote workers in even more countries. And I think just reflects, the global nature of Web3 and tech in general. And we have users and creators really, all over the globe.
Now, how is Sandbox upgraded its graphics? I think the one thing from Sandbox that everybody knows is the music video that Snoop Dogg made like 2 years ago. Yeah. So are things getting upgraded from there? Is that one of the projects you've got going?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, so if you haven't seen the Sandbox, we have what we call a voxel style. So if you don't know what it is, it looks a little bit like Minecraft in a way. It's in between Minecraft and maybe Roblox, to give you an idea. And it's those boxes. And the reason we chose that there are many reasons why we chose that. The first one is that we really like the look and feel. We think it's very, very cool. And we're not photorealistic, right? And it's really on purpose. Some metaverse have decided to be what we call high definition or photorealistic, and we've decided to go another path and have this boxy style, if you want. And as I said, it's very cool. It also forces us and our partners to focus on the narrative and the storytelling instead of focusing on the rendering. And I think people are much, much more creative that way. And third, because we rely a lot on UGC, which stands for user-generated content,
right?
It's way, way easier to create content from basically assembling, blocks, a bit like Lego blocks, if you will,
right,
as opposed to creating high-definition content or photorealistic content, which require, professional teams, very often big teams. So the goal for us is to really tap into a very big pool of talent, non-professional people, and that's why we chose, this, voxel style.
So I wanted to talk about your background a little bit. just because it's so fascinating, starting with your investment in a carbon neutral crypto mining.
Yes.
Which sounds like a really, really exciting idea. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I don't want to go too far off the sandbox conversation, but that one, carbon neutral crypto mining, caught my attention.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been passionate about, not always, but I've been passionate about cryptocurrency since the mid-teens, in 2015, 2016, and in 2017, I decided to create a crypto mining company in Canada using renewable energy in Quebec, more exactly. And it was very important for me that it was carbon neutral. We started a company with my brother, and company is doing well. It's publicly traded, and it's entirely powered by hydroelectricity. So very, very cheap, zero carbon emission, and works well, actually. So that was a very, very fun experience.
So you said that you sold a bunch of companies, including a game company. Which of those did you, well, first of all, what was the first one?
So my first company was an internet consultancy company that I sold to a Swedish company, and then started a gaming company, which went public in Paris. And then I started a third company, which I sold to Gameloft. If for people who follow the gaming industry, Gameloft is one of the largest mobile gaming company, and I sold it in 2018. And the funny story is that when you sell a company, sometimes you have what you call a lockup. I had to wait 3 years.
Yep.
After selling, and after 3 years, that was December 2021. I was on my way to have like some kind of sabbatical in 2022. But then the founders of the Sandbox called me and they say, why don't you join us instead? And I, literally in days, I said, put aside my sabbatical plans and moved from New York to Los Angeles, where I started the US operations for the Sandbox.
So you got pretty excited about this idea when you heard it. You upended your life and moved across the country. What was it about the idea that was so powerful that a couple of days after hearing about it, you made this kind of life-changing decision or lifestyle decision?
Yeah. But I was board member at the time, so I really I got access to.
So you knew what you were getting yourself into.
The traction. I mean, somehow, but I saw the traction, I saw the numbers, I saw the phenomenal traction, and talking to the founders and reading in the press, I saw the vision, the ambition, and the potential for this, and really got me excited, and decided to jump in early 22.
So because Sandbox is so tied to a crypto economy, has the wild gyration in values affected you? How do you navigate around that?
So yeah, I mean it's called the bear market, right? In economic terms, and it's not fun because people are a bit gloomy, and we had better times, like maybe a year ago. But I mean, I've been in the crypto space for a while, and it's not my first crypto winter, as we call it, or bear market.
Yeah,
probably not the last, and we have to live with this. So it has affected the environment, but it hasn't really affected us as a company for many reasons. First of all, players and users, they don't really care that much. So we haven't seen an impact on usage on the one hand, and we haven't seen an impact either from big brands and celebrities still wanted to join the Sandbox and Metaverse in general. So we haven't been directly impacted a lot. We have enough money in the bank. We are really focusing on building and improving the product, making it more fun, attracting more users, attracting more creators. So far, so good.
And what is the value proposition for builders aside from sort of owning a little piece of the Sandbox? Are those builders looking at a lot of different platforms, or do they settle on one and kind of colonize it?
I mean, I think you have all of those. I mean, some creators really want to focus only on the Sandbox because they love it and they like the style, they like the community, they like what they can do with us. And some others will want to work across multiple metaverse, which is both are fine. I think the value proposition is beyond the ownership and the freedom that those creators have. Also, the economic, value is much more interesting for them because our commission rate is only 5%. So 95% of the proceeds of what you make as a creator, comes back to you. And if you compare this to other big marketplaces, it is very, very competitive.
So you guys have had a lot of success selling land, really just from the beginning, which has always fascinated me. First of all, how land works in Second Life? It's like buying a condo. Yes, you buy the land, but if you build a really nice condo, you pay more in condo fees every month. So you own it, but you also rent it.
Yes.
So does Sandbox do it that way? You've had very high profile people buying land.
No, we don't do it that way. Once you buy the land, we don't have like a tax, we don't have like fees or renting or anything.
And I can build as elaborate as poly intensive an environment as I want there without paying.
Exactly. So you have
I can see how that would be very attractive.
So first of all, we decided, as opposed to other metaverse, we decided to have a finite amount of land. We have exactly or roughly 166,000 plot of land. Every plot is about 2.5 acres. And so altogether, the Sandbox, seen from an avatar's perspective, we are slightly bigger than Los Angeles or about the size of London, roughly. So if you were to walk around. And people very quickly, they really, brands and individuals and companies, they understood the value of having a finite amount of land. And it's a bit like, buying a land, in Manhattan or Hong Kong or Los Angeles. They don't just, at one point, they don't expand forever. So
now that's a really, really interesting question because it brings to mind, well, first of all, let me ask you about navigation. And again, I apologize for not doing more homework on the Sandbox. But how do I get around in the Sandbox? Can I teleport? Can I go to Matthew's Island from wherever I am? Or does it?
You can.
So
you don't walk around. You don't wander around like from one land to another. Not yet. Probably going to come a bit later. But right now you teleport. So you land into what we call a hub, and it's like imagine it's like a homepage if you were to use and then from there you can go.
So the real value is adjacency to a hub.
Yes. Yeah. It's also we have neighborhood. So the value is that it's finite, but at the end of the day, the value of a land is really what you can make out of it, what kind of experiences you can build on top of it, and how you can monetize on top of it. Because the value of the land itself is I wouldn't say zero, but it's really what you make out of it. So people are buying lands to build something, whether it's a game, whether it's a concert, whether it's a social experience, whether it's, could be a fashion show, it can be a concert, it can be a mini game. I mean, anything you want. So the value is really what you make out of it at the end of the day.
But meanwhile, anybody can visit the Sandbox, make an avatar, and visit the different worlds that have been built. You don't have to buy sand or land or anything. It's free to join. And I would imagine that most of the visitors are free, right?
Exactly. The vast majority of the visitors are entirely, for free. You only need to pay if you want to buy something, like, buying an item in a mobile game, for example.
Sure.
Or if you're a creator, you have to buy a piece of land and then you build something. So the piece of land, I think the smallest plot, as I said, is 2.5 acres. And I think it goes for maybe roughly $1,000 right now. And
that's quite a bargain when you consider you had JP Morgan of all companies signing up when it was a couple of $1 million.
Yeah, the price of the land depends on the size of the plot. So you can, if you have 2.5 acres, it's about roughly $1,000. But some companies or some people have much bigger plots.
Oh, I see.
Think the biggest.
So they might buy 10 square miles.
Yeah, I think the biggest you can buy is about the size of Central Park in New York City. So that gives you an idea. And this can go for, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And also the price is impacted by the neighborhood or who you're close to.
But once I buy Central Park, I can put skyscrapers there and rent apartments to anybody I want.
You could. We have a limit a height limit. and
A height limit.
yeah. Because we don't want people to build like, you know, 1,000 miles high, you know, skyscraper. It wouldn't be nice for the
So,
experience.
well, since it's like Los Angeles where I live, what I really want is a helicopter to get around.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you can teleport basically. So you go back to the
Yeah.
hub and you say, "Oh, I want to go to this land," and boom, here you are.
So in a world where you're teleporting around, is being adjacent to somebody like Atari or the celebrity you have Paris Hilton and other celebrities, and there is proximity to them valuable?
I mean, in people's mind, yes, and you know, like in real estate in the physical world. I mean, you can be a, you know, if you live in the hills in Los Angeles, you can be neighbor to, you know, a celebrity, but you will
Right.
actually never really see them.
Right.
But it's still valuable.
Right.
And I think, you know, I think it's very much follows what you see in the real life.
So you're based in Los Angeles? Because I'm talking to you in the UK, but you're a
Yeah, I was based in LA. Now I'm traveling around the world at the moment, but I was in LA before. Yeah.
And are you coming back to LA?
From time to time, yes.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you here on your next visit.
Yeah, I love LA. Yeah.
Mathieu, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Congrats on the success of the Sandbox, and looking forward to watching it grow into a thriving metaverse with millions of visitors and a very valuable currency. So,
well, Charlie, thank you very much. Was a pleasure to be here today.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully we'll have you and Sebastian back, and I would love to see you in LA on your next visit. Thanks again. Have a great weekend, everybody.